3 years ago, Caleb Love came into North Carolina as a freshman and projected one and done. But here we are in the 22-23 season, and he's still around. Why so? We're going to talk about it all on today's episode of Locked On Tar Heels.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, it's Wednesday, August 3rd, 2022. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast. I'm your host, Isaac Shade, and I want to thank you for making Locked On Tar Heels your first listen and your first watch every single day. Don't forget, this is the only daily Tar Heels show out there, and so we are honored that you would check in with us every day. With me as he is every Wednesday is the man coach, Pat Kilby, who's getting ready to start back to coaching and school next week. Pat, our thoughts go out to you, brother, as the school year gets going. And as we said today, we keep on going with our roster preview series. If you haven't been checking it out, man, we're well deep into it. Caleb's the last junior, and then we'll get on to the seniors in the coming weeks. I'll post the link to the playlist so you can watch back all the rest of them. My man Pack, this dude, Caleb Love, has been something of an enigma for the Tar Heels, but I think you and I both think he might have gotten it figured out his sophomore year, especially down the stretch. Why don't you kick us off? Just give us a little bit of his bio and his stats from last year.
Yeah, so Caleb, he's going to be a junior for the Tar Heels this upcoming season. Position is primarily shooting guard, which is kind of been a subject that's been talked about quite a bit amongst Tar Heel fans. He's kind of been moved into that primary two spot. 6'4", got a great frame, 200 pounds, which is up 5 pounds from last year, which is awesome. Love to see that, getting stronger and putting more muscle on. Repping number 2, as many past Tar Heel guards have done. Great number. Looks good in the Argyle, too. Twitter handle, @Caleb2Love. And then Instagram handle, y'all check this out, Caleb. So I'm thinking he must have signed up for Instagram and like when it first came out. Like, how do you?
Yes, dude. I don't know. Like, I've always been, because both my names Isaac and Shade are so unique. I've always been able to just get Isaac Shade for everything. But I mean, he's on like Share level and Prince level. That's what we're talking about here. But with Caleb, it's such a common. I'm so jealous. If I need to ask it, like, bro, how did this happen? Your thoughts, and we'll figure that out.
He had to buy somebody out, or he was just super quick to get onto this thing.
Yeah, I'm guessing he bought somebody out, but with some NIL money now, maybe he could buy somebody out, and that'd be awesome. So, let's look down at his stats from last year, some of his career highs and season highs. What stands out to you, Pac?
Yeah, so 39 games played, 38 games started. The only time he didn't start was senior night. Ryan McAdoo took his spot. He led the team with 34.1 minutes per game. Whew, that's a lot of minutes.
That's a lot.
And I know we'll dive into it some more, but I think that'll come down this year, which will be a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Points per game, 15.9, second on the team behind Mondo. 3.4 rebounds and 3.6 assists. Single game high of 7 assists at Virginia Tech. Now, this one's really stands out to me. It's 2.7 turnovers per game, 7 versus Louisville. 7.
Man, that's ridiculous.
Thank the Lord, he got better at taking care of the basketball. Plus minus total, plus 290 on the season. Plus 34 at BC was his highest. But you got to think the very back stretch of the season really boosted that plus minus number.
I'll pull it up while you're talking. I'll pull up his individual game numbers.
Yeah, he I'm just guessing. Like I said, I haven't seen it, but I would imagine that really spiked towards the end. 37.1% field goal percentage, 36% from 3, and 86.3% from the free throw line. So Caleb, get to the free throw line more often.
No joke. Just while you're paused here, in the 6 games of the NCAA tournament, plus 28, plus 10, plus 7, plus 22, plus 2, and then Kansas was minus 8. So yeah, he had some big showings in the NCAA tournament there.
Yes,
plus
no
minus.
doubt. Yep. Yeah. And then the other thing that stands out on Caleb's stats, 93 total made 3-point field goals, which is sixth most in single season UNC history. So that's just a huge jump, really, from his freshman year, which you love to see. And hopefully we see another jump.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, he poured in, he just had 34 threes his freshman year when he was shooting 26.6%.
Yeah.
Yikes. That's down there.
Yes, it is. But hey, we've talked about how our depth needs to develop and how some of these guys need to become better shooters, and it just kind of gives you a little bit of a sense of relief knowing what our staff did with Caleb in the offseason. And of course, Caleb did a lot too. He put in the work and did what it took to get better. But I'm confident that our staff had a lot to do with that. And so when you look at guys like Puff or Dontrez or whoever that needs to improve their 3-point percentage, that's got to give you some confidence right there.
Yeah, absolutely. You would think that is just going to continue to climb. And I was going to say this later, but just while we're talking about those percentages, I was looking at his jumps in his shooting numbers from his freshman year to his sophomore year. And listen to this, Pat. This is crazy. His field goal percentage increased 5.5% from freshman to sophomore year. His 3-point field goal percentage increased 9.4%. And his free throw percentage, which was already at 80%, jumped up 5.3%. So all three of those shooting metrics, field goal percentage, 3-point field goal percentage, and free throw percentage, all jumped by at least 5 percentage points from freshman to sophomore year, while adding a higher volume at all three statistical categories.
Yeah. Wow. That's really impressive. And then, the coach in me can't help but think of some of the wild and bad shots that he took. So if he can improve on some of that decision making, that we could see another bump.
Yes, absolutely. So anything else from his stats that really kind of stands out to you before we keep going?
Well, the one thing that I'll say about just his stats and just Caleb in general is a lot of times that I've picked up on Caleb, he really needs to get going downhill and get to the basket and get to the free throw line before he really starts to get going. And free throw percentage, 86.3%. I mean, it just says, sometimes players just need to see the ball go through the hoop. And I would love to see Caleb have an attack first mentality coming into this next season to really get himself going.
Yeah. Yes, 100%. 100%. And right now, I mean, he is top 10 in Carolina career free throw percentage. And so that's a dude you want at the line. And goodness, this team as a whole last year was just absurd. And he's the head of that snake. And so that's great news.
Absolutely.
I love all that. So let's talk more in just a second about his strengths, his weaknesses, and we'll have our Coach Davis end of season interview as we always do. But first, let me tell you all a little bit about BetOnline. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your betting needs. Find your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. There's also reviews and news from every league, including MLB, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all your sports wagering info. From live in-game betting, scores, and podcasts, they have you covered. So head to BetOnline today or use your mobile device to learn more about all the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, Pac, so we got into this just a little bit as we started talking there with Caleb's stats, but let's look specifically at his strengths, his weaknesses as they stand now. As we've said, we saw some jumps last season, and so some of these things that we're going to talk about, he might come out in October and we're like, hey, he's got these ironed out, and that's great. But as of now, with what we know heading into the season, let's talk about those strengths and weaknesses.
Sure. Yeah. So the first thing that stands out is something we all witnessed in the NCAA tournament. The man is a straight microwave. And what that means is he can get hot and stay hot really quick. And he can score in bunches and in a hurry. And so that stands out first and foremost. The other thing that stands out to me with Caleb is a guy that's not afraid of a big shot. He's not afraid of a moment. In fact, he wants it. He embraces it, and I think he feeds off of it to an extent. And so, to me, I look at that as a coach. I look at that as a positive. I would want guys that want the ball. I would want guys
Okay.
that want to make the play, and so that's a strength in my opinion. And then the other thing about Caleb is, at least in the second half of the season, he proved to be consistent in this, and so I'm going to go ahead and list it as a strength. Is man, when we need someone to score, he's kind of that guy for us, and he gets us going. And he's a plug. He's energy. He gets the crowd into it. That's kind of, I feel like Caleb and RJ are both very big time players, but Caleb kind of gets more of the love because he plays to the crowd a little bit more. And I'm not going to lie, I like that myself. I like that he involves the crowd and that
Yes.
he brings the energy. And so now, don't get me wrong, part of Caleb's weakness that we'll get into here in a minute is that he also rides the negative emotions of the game.
He does.
But I do love the energy that he brings to the team.
So let me ask you that, Pac. You talked about, as a coach, you love a guy who's not afraid of the moment, who's not afraid of a shot, to take a big shot and make or miss. I want the ball in my hands, which, as you've already alluded to, can also be him taking too much on his shoulders. But when Caleb wears those negative emotions on his sleeve, which, as you said, he is wont to do often, as a coach, would you prefer, I'll give you three options, him to figure it out himself, a teammate to pull him out of that, or would you like, as a coach, to be the one to do that?
Well, that's a tricky question because, to be honest with you, to an extent, you have to have all three of those things. And I'll just lay it out like this. The coach sets the standard for a culture. When a culture is set, the players lead the way. And players mature and grow enough that they can pull themselves out of things. So there's a little bit of all three of that. Now, preferably, if your culture is where it needs to be, I would say, I would answer that with a player pulling a teammate out would be the best thing, because that means you have a player-led team, which ultimately is the goal. That's what sports are for at any level, is to develop leadership and mold men. And so to see that from teammates is what you want to see as a coach. But you also want to see players grow up and realize it and pull themselves out too before it ever gets to that point.
Absolutely. And hopefully that's the maturity that Caleb is able to find heading into what is probably going to be his final year in Chapel Hill, although we've said that all 3 years of his college career so far. And that makes me wonder, who is that teammate? Because Leaky is the natural candidate, but he's not been that type of vocal leader. I feel like RJ isn't the guy to do it. I just sometimes think they just have this weird dynamic. So I wonder if it's Mondo stepping in to do that.
Interestingly enough, when I would go watch practice some last year, with Brady being there.
Yep.
I found Mondo to be more vocal than what I realized.
Interesting.
And I'll tell you this, RJ Davis is a great communicator. And we might not necessarily see it as much on the court, which is hard to do because, we're watching through a TV or from the stands. We don't hear and see everything that's going on. But RJ is very much a vocal leader. And that really shocked me. But a lot of times the reality is practice is where most things are developed, especially trust between players and trust between coaching staff and players. And so what I saw showed me that RJ is kind of the vocal leader. And then I would say Armando was right there with him.
Interesting. Man, that'd be good. And I'm also interested. Pete Nance seems like just has that type of temperament and demeanor where I think he's going to be immediately well respected by his teammates.
Yes. Yeah. He seems to fit in great with them already. And then obviously the leadership and seniority that he brings.
Yeah, that'll be good. I love what you talked about with Caleb's three-point shooting, especially down the stretch. He made 6 threes 3 times in the final 15 games of the season, including twice in the NCAA tournament, in the first game against Marquette, and then in the UCLA game which, by the way, to me is a huge example of him not being afraid of the moment. Like, I think that UCLA game might be the most overlooked game of the NCAA tournament for Carolina, just because there were so many other big things. You know, you had the first one against Marquette. It's the first game. The Baylor game and all its craziness. The St. Peter's game because it's St. Peter's. And then the Duke game, hello. And then the national championship game. And so this game against the team that has the most national championships out there is perhaps the most overlooked. But it's the team coming off a Final Four. It's the team that returned just about everybody. And listen, without Caleb Love's insane performance in that game, Carolina isn't even playing in the Elite Eight. And so to me, that game is in a nutshell what you're saying about, like, I need a dude who's just, when he's hot, is just going to go do it.
Yeah. And he's not afraid to do it. And so, yeah, he's never afraid of that moment. He'll go get a bucket if he has to. And that's one thing that I was really proud to see from him down the stretch, was just a willingness to do what it takes to win.
Yes.
Which at some point in times earlier in the season and then back to his freshman season, we missed out on. But that's growth and maturity.
Man, I love that. Okay, so Pac, let's move to talking about Caleb's weaknesses as we see them. And I think it's going to line up with the Coach Davis meeting. So let's just wrap all that into one here, and let's have our Coach Davis meeting. Be Coach Davis. Tell me as Caleb, hey, brother, here's 3 things I need you to work on this offseason.
Yeah, so first of all, it's got to be consistency, and consistency in 2 different realms. First of all, consistency in leadership. We can't, he's a guard. He's expected to be an extension of the coach on the floor. And so there's, in any game, whether you're the better team or not, there's ebbs and flows. There's ups and downs, and guards and extensions of the coach are expected to be level-headed, and they're expected to pull their team through that. And so I would like to see more of that from Caleb. Less up and down and more steady across the board. The other thing is decision making. We saw an improvement down the second half of the season. Obviously, 2.7 turnovers per game is way too much for one of your starting guards to be averaging. So I'd like to see turnovers decline and then assists increase. And if nothing else, just good decision making with the basketball.
Yeah, absolutely.
With his ability, gosh, he's so good at creating and getting to the rim, and he's so strong. He should be able to make good decisions with the ball and find his teammates and put teammates in position to succeed and to score.
Yes. Yeah.
And then lastly, and this is kind of plays straight into what I just said, trusting his teammates. And I don't know that there's a distrust, but there's and I don't want to call it a selfishness either. It kind of comes off as that sometimes with bad shot selection or forced shots. But I would like to see him just involve his teammates more because of his ability to create. If he could find a way to do that, that would benefit the Tar Heels.
Yeah, and it's got to be so hard to balance that with when we need a bucket, go get it. And he has that capability. So it's like you got to keep that self-confidence. But I'm tracking it exactly with what you're saying. It's like he takes too much of the weight of the world on his shoulders, and it's like he's reverted to high school where maybe he had to be the dude at times, whereas now he doesn't. And so it's almost like you just want to just take him by the shoulders and say, brother, I love you. You're a phenomenal basketball player. So are the rest of these dudes, and you don't have to do it all. And to me, that is one of the big things that's holding him back from being able to make the leap into the draft. I'm right with you on all that.
And, we kind of saw, not to bring this up, it's just terrible for all of us to think about, but we kind of saw the worst case scenario in the national championship game. It was kind of that, I'm going to do this. I'm going to will it to happen. And, look, what I was saying in the stands? He's done it all along. And so, like, throughout the NCAA tournament. And so it was kind of one of those things where, as a coach, it's like, well, he got us there, so I can live with it a little bit. But at the same time, if it's not falling, it's not falling. You either got to get to the rim, you got to get to the free throw line, or you got to involve your teammates. And he just didn't do that as much as I would have liked to see. But, hey, he's going to grow. He's going to continue to learn and figure those things out.
Yeah. Just to put it in numbers for everybody, looking back at his box score, Caleb Love was 5 for 24 from the field, 1 for 8 from 3, 2 assists, 4 turnovers, -8 on plus minus in the national championship game. But in 3 other games in the NCAA tournament, he had 23 points, 30 points, and 28. And so just like you're saying, it's like, as a coach, that's such a tough spot to be in. And you want your shot makers making and taking shots. So,
Yeah.
man.
And then, hey, real quick, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Real quick,
No, go.
2 things I missed. I just want to touch on weaknesses or areas I want to see him grow. Number one, I felt like Caleb had multiple opportunities to take charges last year. And here's how I look at this. Now, not everyone's a fan of the charge, but this is the way I look at it. A charge, we call it a slam dunk on defense. Like, it's an energy boost. The teammates get fired up. The bench gets riled up. And it's a turnover. It's a win for your team. And so I'd love to see him step in and take some charges. And then just improvement in ball handling. That's one area where, like, especially if RJ's out, or just look at the Baylor game. One of our guards had to step away. They were pressing like crazy. Gosh, we needed some ball handlers out there. And
Leaky's throwing the ball off the backboard. It's a whole thing.
Yeah, exactly. I'd love to see him improve in that area.
Yeah, that's great. Man, yes, thank you for getting those impact. I think those are important things to be reminded of as well. So then let's leave all that and take it and look ahead to this coming year. Similar to what we said with RJ last week, I think we basically know what what Caleb's role will be this year, but let's unpack it a little bit because there's some interesting nuance to it as we try to figure out this RJ Caleb duo in the backcourt and what that actually looks like.
Yeah, so we talked about it a little bit last week with RJ. There was a back and forth. Caleb was kind of the predominant one, and RJ was the 2, and there was some switching them around, and we finally settled. And RJ was the one. It was clear he was the better point guard, and Caleb was better off the ball. And they finally seemed to settle into their roles. And so the expected role moving forward, in my opinion, is for Caleb to be just totally confident in his role as the starting shooting guard. He's going to be getting, in my opinion, he's likely going to be getting a high volume of shots, which is the same as last year.
Yeah.
And he's going to be, another extension of Coach Davis on the floor.
Absolutely. Yes, 100%. And that's what we need from him. Interestingly, I was listening back to an interview with Coach Frederick earlier this week. And it's funny because I think to us outside the program, it looks like the delineation is very clear between RJ and Caleb as the 1 and the 2. But to hear him say it, it's not as clearly defined internally. And he talked a little bit about it being almost matchup based or whatever works. But I feel like as we get into the season, it is going to be really clear. Like, I almost want to chart how many possessions off a made basket or something is RJ the guy, or how many outlets are going to RJ over Caleb. Like, it just seems like it was interesting to me to hear him say that. I was like, really? I don't think that's how it turned out on the court, but
Yeah, that is interesting. And the only thing maybe I can see is I've heard that they're being a lot more focused on transition this year and creating buckets early. And so maybe that's a point of emphasis is, okay, we've got Leaky, we've got Caleb, we've got RJ, and we feel comfortable just outlet the ball and let's go. And let's see what we can get early. And then maybe we'll settle in, get RJ the ball, and run some of our ball screen stuff. Such a big fan of. So maybe that's what he's alluding to. But I agree with you. If it's not that, I mean, it's pretty much clear and defined. It's RJ. And, if that's not clear now, it'll make itself clear over time.
Yeah. And that's an interesting segue into the next little piece where we talk about newcomers affecting playing time and departures affecting playing time. It's essentially the same we talked about last week with RJ. Seth Trimble is the newcomer affecting playing time, and Kerwin Walton and Anthony Harris are the departures affecting playing time, but they really don't ultimately. But what's interesting is I'm really interested to see Like when Seth and RJ are on the court together, how does it play out? When Caleb and Seth are on the court together, how does it play out? And so I just think that is going to be something we're just not. I mean, we can make all the guesses in the world and conjecture and ask Coach Davis, but until we actually see the product on the court, there's not going to be an answer to that.
Yeah, absolutely not. I will say, I give you a prediction.
Do it.
With Seth on the floor, I think he's going to be playing the two. If it's RJ and Seth on the floor, I think Seth is going to be playing the two because, man, he's bigger than I thought he was.
Yeah.
And RJ's naturally the one, but golly, Seth posted a picture with him and Vince Carter, and he's every bit as big as Vince Carter. And so that really kind of took me for surprise. And I could even see when it's Caleb and Seth, I can see Seth playing a lot of the two. And that may change, moving forward because Seth's obviously going to run some point for us. But my prediction is that he'll play a lot of two and play off the ball.
And that would give him some more time to get settled into to the offense and what to do. And then maybe as he gets settled in, maybe move him more to the one and let those more experienced shot makers take off and do it from the two position. Absolutely. So, Pac, let's look quickly here at a floor for this season specifically for Caleb, because obviously his freshman year is far and away the floor. So this year's floor and this year's ceiling.
Yeah, so this year's floor to me is second team All ACC. Like that's, in my opinion, the worst we can have him do and still be a national title contending basketball team. Yeah, and I mean honestly, he's shown he's a probable first round pick in the NBA draft moving forward. He's a big time scorer. He's a big time playmaker. He's big amongst fans, and so. To me, second team All ACC is the absolute floor we should get from Caleb.
Okay. What about the flip side of that? Man, if he just balls out this year, maybe the lottery is a potential, but if he just balls out, what does that look like on the NCAA level?
Well, it looks like ACC Player of the Year. I mean, to be honest with you, maybe this is the homer in me. I don't know, but I think that we have the two players most likely to be ACC Player of the Year, and that's Caleb Love and Armando Bacot. And then, obviously, if he's ACC Player of the Year, he's probably first team All-American, maybe second team. But if we get that from him, I mean, golly, if he's ACC Player of the Year, then that means we're winning the national title because we're getting that from him. I mean, honestly. So.
Yeah, and the only issue there would be if Armando and Caleb's votes cancel each other out for ACC Player of the Year.
That's true.
But that's just semantics of voting. So whatever, those two dudes are going to be ballers and get all sorts of conference and national recognition. Take that to the bank. Speaking of which, let's make some bold predictions about Caleb Love for this season. Pac, what you got?
So my bold prediction for Caleb is that he plays himself into a NBA draft lottery pick. That's what I see. Just with his, I see him increasing his consistency, his decision making. See another boost in shooting percentages, and just with his height and with his build, I think NBA teams are going to jump all over him. What about you?
Man, for me, I think the weaknesses we've been talking about. I think this is the offseason. He figures that out, realizes it, and puts it all together because I think his ability to be a decision maker, his ability to have that consistency that we've talked about today is, for me, Carolina's biggest X factor. It's not Puff Johnson off the bench. It's not the freshman. It's not Bacot because Armando is insanely consistent game in and game out. I think we're going to get a very consistent year from RJ Davis. I think defense from Leaky is the same game in and game out. His offense might change, but ultimately for me, Caleb's ability to be a 90% of himself or better game in and game out is the single biggest factor in North Carolina reaching their highest potential and biggest dreams this season. And if he's able to do that, they can win one more game than they did in April last year, and that would be huge. And so I think we see that, but those are the things we're excited for. You've talked so much about his growth and what that is, and I think we're just both on pins and needles for that. Any final last thoughts, Pac?
Yeah, so I'll say this. Dean Smith, when he established the culture in North Carolina's program, it wasn't built, really on wins and losses, but about the development of people, and wins and losses were a byproduct of that.
Yep.
And man, I just think Caleb is really the perfect example of that.
Yeah.
Like, it feels like we've had him longer than just 2 seasons, to be honest with you, but he's just grown so much as a person, and I think that's pretty evident. We can see that through him on the court and off the court. And so I'm really excited about that, and excited to see him continue to grow both as a person and as a player.
Man, that, my friend, is a great final word on our Caleb Love 2022-23 season preview. Love it. Thank you so much. And that is it for today's episode, friends, of Locked on Tar Heels. Coming up tomorrow's show, our first ever talk with Jason Jordan, Sports Illustrated's director of basketball recruiting, who's joined the Locked On family. And we're talking about Gigi Jackson one last time. We got to tie a bow on that whole thing and then put it to bed. Done and over. But looking at where does Carolina go after the Gigi Jackson news? We want to thank you for hanging out with us today. What a great conversation. Please don't forget to subscribe to the show, smash the like button. We'd love to hear your thoughts on Caleb Love. Leave some comments. Follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Heels. You can follow the man Pack at Coach_K23. You can follow me at Isaac Shade. You can get more on the ACC by making Locked On ACC your second listen today. Host Candace Cooper and the local experts of the ACC take you around the conference in 30 minutes, 5 days a week. We're so grateful to you for spending part of your Wednesday hanging out with us, talking about Carolina basketball, talking about Caleb Love, and we want to remind you that it is always a great day to be a Tar Heel. What do you think, Pack? Until tomorrow, peace!